Thank you very much for that very grand introduction. I hope I can deliver on the results, so to speak. So first and foremost, let's just run through a little bit of who Holborn Assets are, Holborn Pass. So we are a global wealth management company. We've been in business now 26th year, still British family owned as well. And as Richard said, a cross-border financial advisory business. So we've got offices all over the place, obviously including Europe, Africa, in terms of South Africa particularly, the Middle East, Asia, and across the other side of the pond as well. So we are an asset management and pension business, really. That's how we started. But of course, with the kind of complexities of cross-border mobility over perhaps the last 5 or 6 years particularly, that's changed now to span all kinds of different aspects in terms of your financial life. So our tag is right money, right place, right time. We look after about 20,000 clients and approximately $2.5 billion of money under our advice. And again, as Richard said, we have a kind of global mobility division as well. I work with them quite closely, and that's where we help people with golden visas to the likes of Portugal, Italy, Latvia. We used to do them for Spain, but that was closed down at the start of this year. Okay, so these are some of the things I'm going to run through today, and I've tried to, for those of you who perhaps joined previously, there'll be some repetition here because it's really important messages we're trying to get across. But I've also added in 1 or 2, shall we say, amendments and updates on various bits and pieces as well. So let me crack on. First of all, let's talk about tax. Nobody particularly wants to pay it, although I've got a different view on that. I think the higher your amount of tax that you're paying means that your income is substantially greater. So perhaps from a different point of view. So tax residency. If you are coming to Spain and you're on a traditional visa, that is dependent on your tax residency. So you have to stay more than 183 days in country anyway, unless you're some kind of, tourist visa or etc. Or if you're an EU national, for example, you don't have any ties in terms of the days, etc. There is another test as well, and this is really to stop people kind of floating around, shall we say, and that is whether you are or is the center of your economic and cultural interest. So an example of that would perhaps be someone who's living in Portugal a little bit of the time, maybe a little bit in the UK, but their family are living in Spain and the kids are in school in Spain. Well, you're a tax resident of Spain, whether you stay 183 days here or not. And vice versa, going back to the UK, if this is predominantly a UK-centric webinar, there are various tests to make sure that you are a tax resident in one country or another. Okay, paying tax in the correct country comes up all the time. I've got to say, it's probably the most common mistake that people make. And some pretty simple things here are government pensions retain taxing rights in the country of origin. And an example of that would be like an army pension, a police pension, but not state pensions. State pensions are still taxed in Spain, and you can expect to pay slightly more tax than you would typically in the UK. And that's really down to personal allowances. So a personal allowance in the UK, 12,500 and something at the moment, which is reasonably high. In Spain, it's 6,000 euros. So approximately, well, less than half, isn't it, in terms of the personal allowance? Whereas the tax rates also in Spain tends to be more generous, or the tax take is slightly more competitive, shall we say, lower down. But then as you start earning more, it's pretty progressive. And of course, you've got 2 different types of tax regimes in Spain. So you've got the special tax regime, it's colloquially known as the Beckham law, where remitted income into Spain is only taxed at 24% for the first 5 years. You don't have to declare overseas assets. It was started, obviously, David Beckham, when he joined Madrid many, many years ago. It's now not applicable to sports stars, etc. It's more actually targeting entrepreneurs and business people. Or you've got your regular income tax regime as well. Okay, pensions, again, probably the favorite mistake people make. They see that they can take the 25% tax-free out of their SIP in the UK, or if they're taking money out of a 401k or a Roth IRA in the States, And lo and behold, they get taxed as income in one big fell swoop in Spain. And that can be a bit of a shock. Obviously, there are ways to smooth that out and still take benefits, but you should take PCLS, pension commencement lump sum, before you become a tax resident in Spain, if that's what you're planning to do. Pensions in Spain are not particularly attractive. It's really, I guess, a UK-centric thing where they're encouraging you to look after yourself, giving you lots of tax relief. Here in Spain, it's pretty low. Caveat as well is you should check your national insurance contributions. Again, I've saved clients, I think my best client, I've saved him about 50 or 60,000 pounds. So you have opportunities because you're living offshore that you can pay, for example, class 2 contributions, which is only £165 a year to top up those missing years. And you can buy back from 2019 at the moment. So they've reduced the kind of window of opportunity, shall we say. A little bit about other bits and pieces. So the kind of common, I guess, platforms, tax efficient wrappers are all taxable in Spain under saving tax rates, which is basically the capital gains rates from 19 to 30% on an annual basis. And it includes things like, ISAs, premium bonds, stocks and shares. I mean, even the winnings on your lottery. So, if you win the big lottery at Christmas and win 100 million, I think you're going to have to pay about 30 million back to the government, which must be very, very painful. Although I would like the 70 million on the other side. That'd be very nice. And there are options, again, as Richard said at the beginning, to use Spanish compliant investment bonds to defer some of those taxes and make the ride a little bit smoother. And I'll come on to that in a second. And this one pops up a lot of the time as well. Client says to me, look, I've got a business in the UK. I take a dividend every year because we all know it's quite tax efficient to do that. However, dividends are taxed as income in Spain. So that can be a bit of a shock. A little table there just explains those saving rates for €6,000 at 19%. So there is no personal allowance. Again, like the UK and your capital gains tax in the UK, you've got a personal allowance of, I think it's £12,000 before you pay anything on an annual basis. So there's none of that here. Interestingly, if you're a non-resident, so if you're a non-tax resident, you just pay a flat rate of 19%. Okay, so what's a Spanish compliant investment bond? It's taxed as an insurance product, so you don't have to file a Modelo 720. It's designed to be held to 5 to 25 years. You can set it up to provide monthly income to perhaps top up your pensions. Tax is only paid on withdrawal, so that kind of slice that you take out, you pay the tax that's due on that. And the provider pays the majority of that direct to the hacienda, so they will pay 19% to the hacienda. So you don't have to deal with those kind of levels. If the gain's more than that, you will still have to fill what's called the Modelo 100, which is your annual tax return, and then you'll pay the difference in the tax. Global investments, global providers, etc. And the minimums on those start at about €50,000. Other options, lots of talk about Spanish compliant bonds all the time. I always think there's a good alternative. Our platforms, I do a lot of work with that with my clients. It's a bit more administrative because you have to file your profit and loss for the whole year. You just say, okay, I started January 1st with this. I've ended 31st of December with that. Here's my valuations, and you pay the tax to the hacienda yourself. But people like Novia, Arden, Morningstar provide those platforms, as they do in the UK as well and globally. And you can invest in anything. You've got, obviously actives and passives in terms of funds, ETFs, mutual funds, pretty much anything you want. Okay, a little bit here about taxes in Spain generally. And I guess if you're on this webinar, you've done a little bit of research, but I think it's always good just to add one or two bits and pieces in there and confirm them. So we've got wealth tax, we've got solidarity tax, and they're both region specific. So a little bit of history, shall we say. There used to be the wealth tax throughout the autonomous regions, particularly in Andalusia, where I am. The government did some research and looked at the people that were paying wealth tax one year and how many of them were left the next year. And surprise, surprise, it was about 50% had left already. So therefore the tax take was, was dropping massively. So they decided to ditch it. The federal government said, hey, you're not doing that. You can't do that. So we'll bring in the solidarity tax. But they raised the minimum right up to 3 million per person for the solidarity tax. Whereas some regions still have the wealth tax, which is at 700,000 per person with an allowance for your residence. You've got your Modelo 720 reporting. So you've got any assets in total that are overseas. You might have an English bank account. You might keep that ISA in the UK. I don't know, bits and pieces. You have to report those on that Modelo 720. There's no punitive fines anymore for doing that because a number of people took the Spanish government to the European court and won, but you still have to declare it. And of course, you would have to pay any associated taxes on top of that as well. Usual things like, the UK, US, you've got property taxes, local and region specific, not massive. I was just chatting to Richard before we started about kind of property taxes and council tax in the UK and versus a Spanish version. My EB, as we call it, is about 500 euros a year. I think probably the average council tax in the UK is probably about 1,500 or even more a year. Road tax in Spain, 40, 50 euros a year. Road tax in the UK, is it 150, 200? I saw something the other day that if you've got a big Range Rover or whatever in the first year, you could end up paying thousands. So yeah, that's a big difference. Obviously, we've got sales tax, EVA, 21%, but there are exclusions for different products and different services, like your usual things like your baby food and medical care, etc. So what's happened this year in terms of, kind of changes? Again, we were just chatting earlier, but EVA has gone back onto our electricity and gas bills. It made a pretty substantial difference because it's gone up from 4%, which they brought in kind of post-COVID, because of the crisis, the energy crisis. And that's gone back up to 21%. And also we've just been hit with a new blackout tax. So since the blackout, the power generator, which is Red Electrica, are switching to, they've called it more sustainable power generation. So I'm not sure whether that means less technology and turbines, but basically they're going to be burning more biofuels and kind of types of energy like that, which I guess gives a sustainable flow of energy. Whether it gets to us or not is a different matter. But that's added about 30 or 40 euros per household on a monthly bill as well. We've got a new tax bracket for savings income, capital gains income of 30% or above 300,000. Those people that are looking up to making substantial gains, you would be paying 30% of the 300,000 bracket. It is progressive though, so the kind of nominal rate for that would be about 26, 28%. Spain's doing well. GDP growth in 2024 was exceptionally good, highest in the Eurozone, and it continues to be that way. The positive news is very good in terms of the economy. Obviously, there's some headwinds with tariffs and what's happening with Mr. Trump. And also on the hospitality sector, we are starting to see, and this is anecdotal, but we're starting to see a slowdown in those kind of sectors. And generally people are looking at other options to for the holidays, like I guess Croatia and those types of places, which are perhaps not so crowded and are more welcoming. Employment's rising and residents are rising. So residency is going up by about 600,000 a year, and then employed people at 21 million a year as well, which is good. This is something that comes from my upbringing, I guess. I was born in Yorkshire, so my mum and dad used to talk about, looking after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. But just a couple of things here to spark an idea. A couple of my friends who I've known for, 5, 6 years still have their UK mobile number. No idea why, and they're paying 30, 40 quid a year, whatever, a month, whatever it is. The mobile providers like Lobster, I pay 12 euros, get as much data as I want. I can call America for free and call the UK for free. I can call my American clients on their mobile for free. So those kind of things. Smart currency, obviously, your overseas home, smart currency, they can set up For example, regular foreign currency payments, if you're getting your UK pension, obviously you don't want to be doing that transaction through your bank. It'll cost you probably 2 or 3% extra every single time. And they can provide obviously longer term rates as well by hedging that currency risk out. Another one, again, from personal experience, a friend of mine got a €4,000 bill for parking fines and speeding fines. Well, he did go back 6 years, but he'd never updated his address, so he didn't know about it until his bank account was embargoed. And another big money saver really is life insurance. So life insurance through a bank. So if somebody takes out a mortgage here, you're forced to take the bank's insurance for the first year only. Most people let it run on, but it goes up and up and up in terms of cost. And that's because of the risk. Whereas international policies, UK policies, ones that we can help with are on a fixed term basis. So that can lead to substantial savings. And I've put here subscriptions. It's a silly thing, isn't it? But, in terms of that, are you going to be using those in Spain? Do you need X, Y, and Z subscription? They've almost become like another utility. Okay, some do's of your move. Talked there about smart currency. Obviously, check that out with those guys, how we can help. Book a meeting with ourselves 3 to 6 months before you move, or any regulated professional company that's got the right advice, permissions to get that specific planning advice. If you're going to sell your property in the UK, sell it before becoming a tax resident, because there is no main residence tax exemption in Spain. And that will, save you on the capital gains tax on that. And again, look at specific circumstances for some of those different types of products that you might have or you've accumulated over the years, of what is the best practice to do them. You don't have to, for example, liquidate your ISA in the UK, but you will have to declare it to the Spanish authorities. So there's kind of pros and cons to those types of things. And again, just to mention there about your pensions, take some advice, particularly on that, particularly around the PCLS. Maybe an obvious one, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do it. Tell your institutions your new address, your contact details, where you're going to be, confirm things like life. If you write to your life policy company and tell them that you're moving to Spain, here's my new address, please confirm I'm still covered. That's it. Job done. You don't want to be worrying about, whether you're still covered in Spain. 99.9% of the time you will be, and you should be. Update your will. Obviously let HMRC know that you're going. It's called notice of leaving. Goodbye. We're off to the sun. And when you get here, make sure that you update your will in Spain. Great system in Spain. All wills are held digitally and centrally. So there's no back of a fag packet. There's no envelopes with, was it a solicitor in Wigan or Barnsley or Leeds? I can't remember who's got your will. Or did I give it to my sister, or was it my brother, or did we leave it with cousin Frank? I don't know, whatever. So in Spain, it's all held digitally. You can update it at the notary, and any lawyer with the right permissions can access that. One other thing to consider as well, you might be coming to Spain to live, become a tax resident here, but you might still have UK inheritance tax liability. A lot of people forget about that. And again, that's what we can help with. So assets, and because basically the way that the legislation has changed, it's going to be residence based in the future, but there is a time corridor, shall we say, of when you are no longer subject to those inheritance tax. You would, of course, then be subject to Spanish inheritance tax. But again, it depends in what region. Again, Andalusia, they just did away with it. You get a 99.99% allowance on your inheritance tax. And again, that's to attract people to live, work, and retire in the region. So it's very pro-business. Okay, I rattled through that in 24 minutes. I think that's pretty good. For those of you that are tech savvy, QR code on the screen there, which you can scan with your smartphone. My email ID is there as well, robin.thornton@albanassets.com. WhatsApp number, obviously here in Spain. If you want to drop me a message, any of those will work for me. And effectively what we offer is a 30-minute free consultation to see if we can help you. And sometimes if we can't, and sometimes they'll just turn around to people and say, actually, you don't need an advisory. You could do this and you can do that. Or perhaps might refer you to a specialist if it's a complicated case.